Hello and welcome. Here at 0 to 40k, we don't bury the lead, so I'm just going to say straight out my theory is that Henry Cavill will play Garviel Loken in his new Warhammer production. What I'll do in this episode is I'll tell you why he's playing Loken and not the Emperor, not a Primarch, not any of your favorite Inquisitors or Commissars. This has a lot to do with how the entire arc of story goes in the Horus Heresy, and a lot of that arc starts with Garviel Loken, and in the book series The End and the Death, which is the very last trilogy, only one of the books is out so far. He's also central in that book, which brings the Horus Heresy arc to a close in literature. We'll discuss how the character works in terms of cinema and storytelling, and we'll also discuss the franchise as a business and how the first series will be ripe for hooks and spin-offs. It's a huge IP, and it's ready for multiple treatments, so it makes sense to start with the Horus Heresy to get a larger audience involved. And Garviel Loken is possibly the perfect character for Henry to play to make that all come together. Now, if you're listening to this right now, you've probably seen a bunch of clickbaity, ads and say like, hey, Henry Cavill to play the Emperor. Well, I doubt it. I doubt it. Even in the afterwards of the books, many of the books, a lot of the authors, and bear in mind that the Horus Heresy books, the whole Black Library, is written by a wide variety of authors. They often cite how the Emperor is not really supposed to ever be fully known to the reader. This is a central part of the narrative, and it's an important device that the story uses. The Emperor sits at sort of the fulcrum between man and God, and he's this super eternal being, but is deeply flawed. And in some books, you get kind of close to him. And he gets, even the book about him, Master of Mankind, he gets some solid treatment there, but a lot of times it's interestingly kept at a bit of a distance. You don't spend too much time in his head. You see a lot of things that he does from the perspective of someone else near him. You rarely see things from his own perspective, from his own lens, if you will. Narratively, the Emperor is a device more than he's a relatable character, and this is deliberate. He allows the writers to use him as a monolithic, albeit nuanced, Deus Ex Machina kind of thing. He's eternal. He can do things that the reader or viewer can't anticipate. He can operate in ways that sort of break the preconceptions that you may have about what's possible in the 40k universe. He's also just patently not a relatable character, also on purpose. It's true not only for the viewer, but for the characters that surround the Emperor. He's larger than life, even to the Primarchs. And while he's not all powerful, he's very powerful, and he's super fallible in a lot of ways. He's also elevated or ascended in a way that serves the narrative better as a mysterious concept than as a character you kind of snuggle up to and are like, oh man, I love Han Solo. It's the Emperor's just not like that. And he's used in that way. He's a very cutting edge science fiction kind of character. He's a lot like, if you think about Dune, he's like Paul Atreides long after he's some guy who's just running around fighting with knives and hanging out with the Fremen, when he's really elevated to this universe galaxy reaching force. I don't think that makes sense for Henry Cavill to play. Now, why won't he play my favorite Primarch? And the answer to that is actually in the statement right there. It's your favorite Primarch. Narratively and from a product perspective, the Primarchs represent a splintering of the human condition into its component parts. If you like running around smashing stuff, to oversimplify, you probably like Angron. If you're a little bit moody and like body horror and stuff like that, you probably like the Death Guard and Mortarion. I myself am building a Death Guard army. I think they're absolutely awesome, but to cast Henry as Mortarion would come at the cost of all the people that like someone else. The Primarchs are like the Seven Deadly Sins or Vices and Virtues. They draw or appeal the viewer based on which one they are as sort of a caricature of an element of the human condition. The Primarchs are also intentionally very incomplete. Each of their characters, what makes them tick is that element that is central to who they are. So they're actually, I mean, they're written very well. Don't get me wrong, but not everyone reads the entire Horus Heresy. People cherry pick the books that are about their favorite characters and sort of go from there. I love the Death Guard, and maybe someday there'll be a Mortarion and Typhus buddy cop spin-off of this series, but it's not going to be the Springboard, and it's not going to be Henry running around, sliding over cars and shooting plagues out and stuff like that. It just wouldn't be wise. It wouldn't be wise for, the production company. It wouldn't be wise for Henry himself. That kind of thing would appeal to me, but it would come at the cost of a massive amount of potential viewers that are trying to be brought into the franchise. But from a production standpoint, the Primarchs are an amazing way to lean into plot threads for a time and get some great actors into the mix. You can imagine that, they may veer off a bit and cover Fulgrim for a while, which they can do as long as the entire series isn't Fulgrim. So they're going to want the freedom to stay untethered from any specific Primarch. Obviously, Horus is pretty important, so we'll get into him next. The Horus Heresy is called the Horus Heresy. Why not Horus specifically? Well, Horus is an amazing character. He's very well written. He has really interesting character flaws. He's extremely like the Emperor, just not the Emperor. He's the first son. Could Henry Cavill play him? Absolutely. He could play this, this rich, dynamic, handsome, powerful warrior who's charismatic. He absolutely could play Horus and knock it out of the park, but he won't. He just won't. It doesn't make any sense. That Henry would do a good job at a role has to be taken as a given and is not the criteria for what he will play. From a production perspective, you'll want someone amazing, but not as the central character. Horus changes so much, and there's such great value in watching that change from another perspective through that other character's lens. Horus and whoever plays him will get a ton of screen time, but he won't be played by Henry. Henry will be having dialogue with whoever plays Horus. What about Abaddon? He's not a Primarch. He'd be really cool. He would be really cool. But he's not Garviel Loken cool. He'd be awesome. His plot arc, however, takes... you're walking around with a villain, essentially, and he's deeper than that. But it makes him work better as a foil than as a main character, as an antagonist. And in the books, he absolutely is Garviel Loken's antagonist, even from go, just personality-wise. Abaddon is set up to have a very long run on either the main series or 40K era spin-offs, and that's fantastic. But following him around, played by Henry, just wouldn't make franchise sense. Abaddon's a bad man. And yes, he has some redeeming qualities. But no, I don't think anyone really is going to watch several, seasons of that. Of him being the central character. Now, put next to Henry, he serves as an amazing counterpoint to Loken's character. Abaddon is central to Loken's character history, where Loken takes the high road on a lot of the plot points that start the Horus Heresy. Abaddon, not so much, and becomes a perfect nemesis. And so, while Abaddon is a very amazing, cool character, he's just better served as the nemesis to Henry's Garviel Loken. Now, there's a lot of theories floating around there about various commissars and inquisitors that have amazing book series. And if the original TV show is successful, there will almost certainly be spin-offs that get as intimate, up close, and personal as like the Eisenhorn stuff or any of the similar type narrative threads do. These stories are ripe for special treatment cinematically, but they're likely too specialized to be used as an opening introduction to the 40K universe. They're great as books, and lots of people cite them all the time, like, this is how I got into 40K lore. But that doesn't necessarily make a great choice for Games Workshop in their first series. The Horus Heresy books were intentionally made to be the most ambitious, reconciling of the lore ever for 40K. It was once a bunch of just, the lore consisted of snippets that were in rule books. But that got all flushed out in dozens and dozens and dozens of books in the Horus Heresy series. And that's something that you as an IP holder want to leverage. They know that they can dig deep and go into those stories that are just about normal or near normal people, or that zero in on a specific faction or a specific planet. I mean, you can entirely imagine Cadia being central to like either a season or its own spin-off series, but they're probably not going to start there. And I don't think Henry's going to be slated to play one of these characters because then it corners you. It would be interesting. I'd love to see it, but I don't think that's where it's going. Now, we've talked a bunch about who Henry Cavill won't play. Why don't we talk about this Garviel Loken guy? Who the heck is he? Why do I care? Well, Garviel Loken is a Luna Wolf, which is part of Horus's army, and he's also part of Horus's inner circle. Very early on in the first book, Loken is inducted into this small group called the Mournval, which it's comprised of 4 captains, so 4 very central leaders in Horus's army, and they serve as an interesting like political chip or device for Horus. It's an informal group. So Horus, quite often when he's discussing an important topic with politicians or other generals, he can sort of prime the crowd with having a member of his Mournval as a ranked officer but still soldier sort of pipe up and give a suggestion or whatever, so it doesn't come from Horus himself. So these Mournval intimately close to Horus, and they're expected to advise him, and they're expected to be different in character from each other to give Horus a bunch of military people that are of his own army, but that he can ping ideas off of and get some pushback on. And Loken is inducted into this quartet when a previous officer falls in battle, which is a great springboard plot point. You can imagine just getting, piggybacking onto this character who's just getting sort of elevated and getting into that inner circle that's close to a Primarch, especially one like Horus Heresy. Pretty important, you think? But as things start to slip for Horus, and as he starts going down that slippery slope of chaos, Loken resists, and in the end, he pays a hefty price for it. Abaddon is another member of this Mournval and becomes a foil, a nemesis for Loken as of this, rift showing up. Loken is a good guy. And a lot of times he's the voice of reason, and that works for a bit until things start slipping too much and he gets pushed out. He gets ostracized. Now, for an Astartes, Loken is very relatable. He interacts with other humans. He's intellectually curious. He questions why things are done the way they are done. He questions the motivations and efficacy. He's not a doubter or a hater, but he's still fully on board with what this great crusade that the Emperor has employed all of these, Astartes to be a part of. He believes, and he's not easily swayed by the opportunity for more power, or maybe if we just bend this one rule from the Emperor, like just bending one little thing's okay. Early on, he joins a lodge, which is basically the gateway drug to going to chaos. These lodges are set up in various legions, and they function differently in each one of these legions. They were introduced by Erebus, who, if you know the name Erebus, he's no good. He's the principal architect that gets Horus turned. And Garviel joins one of these really hesitantly. What they are is kind of like, they're like a little secret society in every legion, where people can just show up and speak their mind regardless of rank, and they have kind of weird rituals that Loken's like, yo, this feels like religion. We're really not supposed to do that. And everyone's like, nah, it's just tradition. Everyone shows up in a hooded cloak and there's candles, and they say the same secret, entry phrase, but it's not really religion. It's not that thing that Emperor talks about. And eventually Loken's like, yo, I am not cool with this. And he sees it for what it is. He doesn't believe it at the start. Uh, but anyhow, like Loken is a good litmus test for like how you don't go down this entire dark road. Uh, he's Loken changes over time as he learns how the universe works. He's a witness to the full realization of the warp as like a conduit for dark gods. Uh, the warp isn't just a spooky place that the Emperor leverages to do Emperor things like make the Primarchs conduct interspace travel, or to like set up a psychic Discord service that uses hell as its networking protocols. Loken is a first-hand witness to that realization of like, ooh, this is bigger and strange and dangerous. And so while Horus is getting corralled and manipulated, Loken is one of the only characters that calls out the threat. And even before we or the characters really know what the threat is, Loken is very astutely like gathering knowledge and really thinking about what's in front of him. And he goes along with some stuff for a little while, but when he sees that things take a turn and start becoming dangerous, he backs out. And that will be an amazing character to watch unfold, and B, plotline to be witness to. Now, Garviel Loken is this character that the books put a set of cameras on. And on paper, he's your window into how the Horus Heresy unfolds. And I use the word camera and window and lens here pretty intentionally. And I think the TV series will do it too. You can follow Loken around in space and see, with a hefty amount of dramatic irony, just how all of the pieces fall into place. And I think this is exactly what the show wants to do, and what they want out of a lead role. They want a protagonist that is noble and relatable, that is the witness for things, going down the tubes. Loken early on firsthand witnesses a demonic possession that ends in one of his space marines killing a fellow Astartes. And in the moment, to him and everyone around him, this is one of those like, this just doesn't happen moments. It's unprecedented. Like, they can't even comprehend how one space marine would kill one of their own brothers. As I said before, Loken joins, but then leaves a lodge, which is, gateway society to moving towards chaos. It's a divisive move by Erebus to get some amount of superstitious belief into the different legions. Loken gets to spend some time with Erebus, who definitely needs some screen time, and their interactions are pretty interesting. The kind of stuff where if you were reading a script and you were a huge Warhammer fan, you'd be like, man, I'd love to be in this. Loken's part of Horus's inner circle. He's present at the fight that gets Horus injured and eventually leads Erebus to convincing Horus that chaos is the way to go. He's at all these places and all these key times. By the time Horus is in deep water, Loken's been pushed to the status of an outsider by the bad guys. It's the point where, the turning point of the Horus Heresy, not the turning point, but where it really becomes treacherous, is Horus and some of the other Primarchs decide they need to cull their own armies for people that they think are going to go along for the Chaos ride. And Loken is on the ground when Istvan III gets virus bombed. And that really is the moment that, not that everyone in the universe gets it, but that's the moment when Horus really just like commits the kind of atrocity that proves out he's gone over fully to the chaos side, that the heresy is underway. Now, all of these sort of moments that Loken is present for are very solid material for explaining the roots of the Horus Heresy. It would make fine episode arcs. The Horus Heresy explains how we got to the 40K universe, and from there, any number of spin-offs are in play. And as a production, as a TV series, for an IP that's 40 years old, that has just been written about and written about and written about, this arc with Garviel Loken is the perfect place to start. Loken serves as sort of the beginning and end of the Horus Heresy and vis-a-vis that, the Siege of Terra book series, which is sort of the capstone of it, when Horus finally shows up at Terra and is like attacking. So part 1 of 3 of The End and the Death, which is the final trilogy of the final part of this mega entire arc of books. Part 1 is out on the shelves, and that series covers the actual siege, when everyone is sitting inside, this Imperial Palace, and Primarchs are fighting outside the gates and then inside, and chaos is taking over, and time gets all screwed up, spatial reality gets screwed up because there's so much chaos come to Earth. I'll give you one guess as to the name of a character that is set up to once again bear witness to all the juiciest bits of the climax of that entire story arc. And that's right, it's your boy Garviel Loken. Now, The End of the Death does a lot of interesting callbacks to the beginning of the Horus Heresy. Horus has this weird fugue state thing going on where he thinks he's talking to a remembrancer from way back in the day when this all started. Abaddon is having second thoughts about how the war is being prosecuted. He's still like Captain Chaos, but and while he doesn't literally concede that maybe Loken was right, Abaddon has a real crisis of character, because the Siege of Terra is just opening the warp up so any manner of demon can come through, and it doesn't feel to Abaddon like it's a real just war that he even believed in. And you get a little sympathy for Abaddon there. Would be an amazing sort of end of the series arc to get to that point. But my point here is that Loken didn't have to be there, but how the authors work and how the whole arc works, it's this perfect alpha and omega situation. Loken is there at the beginning and sees everything go down, and then he's on Terra as the jaws of the entire plot are closing. Essentially, Loken's character literally bookends the entire mega epic series of the Horus Heresy. This allows for flashbacks and other back and forth devices during the show. Those are all very popular these days and very useful in explaining really massive epic plots. It allows the plot to pick and choose where and who to focus on at any given point. Once season 1 establishes the beginning and the end, it can go wherever it wants in between without worrying too much about chronology, because everything is grounded, rooted, anchored on Henry Cavill's role. And then further, the final books of the Siege of Terra series are coming out over the next year or so, maybe. I think one of them comes out this fall, then one's slated for next year, but they always take too long. And this allows Games Workshop to sort of build the hype train as the series is starting to come together. And if you think about it, we just had 10th edition of the game come out in 40K, but like right around, couple years from now, you'll have this sort of like looping series of like, okay, the books have come out, maybe this first season of the show has come out. Okay, after the months after that, maybe, 11th edition is coming out, and then they sort of get through the foibles of that, and my Death Guard are awesome in 11th edition, I'm sure, and then after that, season 2 comes out. It gets you into this nice rolling series of Games Workshop's IP being utilized across media over and over and over again. Timing's pretty good. Henry Cavill's Warhammer series needs to think about the future, the grimdark future. It needs to be forward-looking, is the point. Even when you think about his career as an actor, he's probably not going to act in a show for 20 seasons. It needs to be a role that he can go in, set the tone for the show, and then probably step back and take much more of that executive role. Games Workshop is notorious for holding their IP very close to them, and they've been doing so for 40 years. And so to greenlight a series as a springboard to what could become absolutely massive and far-reaching, it really needs to zero in on their interests as well. Garviel Loken represents a key opportunity for Henry Cavill. It's a role that's tasty, but it's manageable. Loken's character is rich, but it has room for a great actor to breathe life into him. It's not a caricature. It's someone that has a lot of angles already written in, but definitely has room for a great actor to come in and really bring it to life. Loken can be played for a number of seasons, but then gives Cavill the option to sort of step back, into one of those more like full executive producer positions once he's sure that the production is headed where he wants to go. And then he can kind of come back in whenever he wants because he's sprinkled throughout that plot arc. And it also allows Harry to get screen time with a wide variety of essential characters, and likely the amazing stars that will play them. And when you think about like the juiciness of a role, part of it is like, I want to play Superman. But another aspect is like, I want to be on screen with X, Y, and Z. And Henry being a lover of this universe, I think that opportunity would be pretty tasty for him, to get screen time with Abaddon, with Horus, to be present during the Siege of Terra, to be on the ground when Isstvan 3 gets virus bombed. And there's a bunch of other characters that are sort of in his inner circle during the beginning that are very rich and huge opportunities, though they're not big names, like Saul Tarvitz and a few others that like, you could imagine other really great actors being in. Like, as an actor, huge opportunity if he decides to go for Garviel Loken. So anyway, that's pretty much the crux of my argument. Henry, if you're out there, and I'm even remotely close on this one, I think you owe me a game of Warhammer. I could take on your Custodes with my Death Guard whenever I finish the other 1,000 points that I have to put together and paint. Folks out there listening, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it makes you think about reading more Warhammer books and digging deeper into the lore. If you like this, I've posted some other podcasty stuff about lore things, so go check that out. Hit subscribe or don't. I'm not your dad. I don't tell you what to do, but I do hope you had a good time, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.